Hi guys, it's Olivia here from Olivia's Catastrophe. Today I'm here to give you my December and January wrap-up. It's a little while since I've done a wrap-up video, so I'm including the last 2 months together even though they are different years. So in the month of January I read 13 books, do not ask me how, I don't understand either. And in the month of December I read 7 books, so bear with me, this will be a long video. I've got 20 books to tell you my thoughts on. Let's do it. Okay, so I'm not going in chronological order, I'm just going in a random order. So let's start with all the physical books that I read, and first up we've got Shatter Me by Tahara Mafi. Now this is a book that I've heard so much about, and I read it at long last and I really had a love-hate relationship with this book. What happens in this book is there's a girl who, if she touches you, you feel excruciating pain, and then she kind of sucks the life out of you and she feels great and you kind of die. So nobody can touch her, and otherwise it will happen. What I hated about this book was that there were so many things that just didn't make sense, and it bothered me so much. And there were so many stereotypical things that happened in this book that literally had me like, why? Why? But the things I liked about this book is that the writing style is absolutely amazing, and as well as that, by the end of the book I could see why she had done some things the way she had. I was still addicted to reading, so that means there's something great about this book. So I'm going to do a full review on this one very soon, because I have so many thoughts. But yes, love-hate relationship, and I own the whole trilogy, so yes, I shall be reading book 2. I also recently read The Word for World is Forest by Ursula Le Guin. Rest in peace Ursula Le Guin, she passed away in the month that I read and studied this book. This book follows this planet which is full of forest. It's like a whole forest planet, and Earth has run out of wood, so humans come to this planet and they are chopping down the wood, and they've enslaved the species on this planet called the creatures. And what happens is they introduce violence to the creatures, because the creatures are a non-violent species, but humans are violent against them, and somehow the creatures learn about violence and say it's time to stand up, and they spark their own revolution. This book, when I read it I was like, okay, and then you get to the end and everything makes sense and you're just entirely mind blown, because this says so much about colonization, this says so much about war, this says so much about humanity and environment and all these really relevant and important themes, and it was just such an amazing and sensational book. I can't wait to read more Ursula Le Guin novels. This was my absolute first one, and I will have a longer review because I just feel like there's so many things about this book that it needs a long discussion. Then I also read Katha Deus by Jeff J. Peters. By the time that this video goes up I should have a long review of this one on my blog and on my channel, so I'll link both of those down below. So if you want to hear more about this fantasy read, definitely go and check those out. Just last night I finished reading Endgame by Samuel Beckett. This is like the fastest read, it was only 50 pages. It's a play. Samuel Beckett's plays are kind of nonsense, kind of absurdism, and if I hadn't already read a play by him before, which was called Waiting for Godot, I don't think I would have been able to appreciate this one. But because I've already studied his work before, I could really see how it was about time, being stuck in time, the uselessness of time, the uselessness of living, and just there were so many themes in this one that are kind of hidden. It's a bit comical as well, but if you don't study it, I don't think you'll quite get it. Not saying that you don't have the intellectual capability to get it, maybe you will get it, but personally I find Samuel Beckett is a hard playwright to appreciate if you haven't done some contextual research and really understand what he's going on about in his plays. I also read Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka, and this is one where the main character is a human and then he wakes up one day and his body has turned into a beetle, this like giant beetle, and it's about how that affects his life. I thought this was brilliant. It's a really quick read as well, and I just thought it was so interesting, all the struggles that he goes through and how his family kind of becomes so dysfunctional and breaks down, and his questioning about identity when it comes to, if I'm a beetle, am I still human? I can still think, I still have this human mind, but I don't have this body of a human and I'm not being accepted by other humans. So it's a really good discussion on identity, I think, but she also ties into a lot of different themes, and I just thought it was such a good read. A little bit weird if you're not really digging the concept, but it's actually a very good book. I also read The Hour of the Star by Clarice Lispector. So this one follows, yes, a girl who lives in the slums of Rio, and she's really poor and she's really, she lives in poverty. she lives alone in poverty, and she's really hated by the world, but she tries to get by, and she doesn't seem to be too upset with living her life in poverty until she can see how she could live her life if she weren't living in poverty. And the very interesting thing about this book is the layer of narratives, because even though this is a story about a girl who lives in poverty, it's not her who narrates the story, it's this rich, upper class man who narrates her story and is trying to feel sympathy for her character. So I think that in this one, Clarice Lispector really plays with the narratives and the differences between wealth and poverty, and whether you can actually truly feel emotions other than pity for those people who live in poverty, or is it just that you, because there's such a difference in lifestyle, you can never truly grasp emotions that will really enable you to help the people who are in need. So other than the whole analysis of what this book is about, the writing style is absolutely beautiful, you guys. It's one of the most beautiful things I've ever read, and I loved it from beginning to end. Such a masterpiece. Then I also read The Home of the World by Rabindranath Tagore. Tagore is a very famous Indian author. This is a translated work. It's about nationalism in India, in history, and, you know, colonization with Britain and how they impacted the economy, but at the same time it's really taken the perspective of civilians. So it follows this girl called Bimala who is married to this man, and another man comes into the house who has entirely different views. So the two men have conflicting ideas. One is really into the Indian nationalist movement, and the other is kind of looking at the bigger picture. And then Bimala gets caught into the middle of this, and as someone who didn't usually engage in the outside world, she finally finds herself, you know, fully engaged in the outside world and the prospects. But while it's all about the world and what's happening in India, at the same time the entire book is set within the house. Because I don't know a lot about Indian history and revolutions and culture, but I learned a lot from reading this one, and even though you might not have any context knowledge before you read this one, you kind of won't need it at the end because everything is explained. I didn't love this book, but I didn't dislike it, but I really enjoyed it. I could see the literary merit in it, and I could see how this was a very important novel. I then read Mother Courage and the Children by Bertolt Brecht. I'm going to be giving a presentation of this next week, which I should probably get started on. But yes, this one is a play set during World War I, and it's about this mother who makes profit out of the war. So she sells things to soldiers and troops and people who are just trying to get by the war, and that's how she makes her money. And she has her children, and she's trying to protect her children from being drafted into the war or caught up in war-like things, so like save her daughter from troops who might want to rape her or sexually assault her, and protect her sons from getting drafted into the war. I read this one in like a day and I really enjoyed it. I just thought it was such a very interesting perspective on the war, as somebody who kind of needed the war to survive, but at the same time as needing the war she also disliked the war because it was hurting her children. And I think that says a lot about war today and this kind of dual mindset that we have. Well, not we have, but a lot of people have towards war, how they kind of need it because it funds their economy, it boosts patriotism, but at the same time they don't want anybody they know to get hurt. So this kind of conflicted mindsets. Very good discussion on that one. I also read The Wasteland, Prufrock and Other Poems by T.S. Eliot for my course. I totally disliked it. I can see how it's so relevant to the time and how it's all about post-World War I feelings and everything. I just found it totally boring and bland, and I just did not enjoy reading it. And I usually enjoy poetry, but I just could not get behind this, so can't really recommend it. Then I read some more of Chaucer's Tales in December. I'd read some in November, I read some more in December, and I'm just kind of telling you guys that I read more Chaucer Tales. I find them entertaining, but a bit hard to translate, and that's really all there is to it. And then in this collection you get Utopia by Thomas More, and I had to read that for my course, and it's about basically, it's these people discussing what is the ideal world, and they come up with this place called Utopia that they claim that they've been to, where everything is perfect. But if you read, you read about the customs, the laws, the society, basically how Utopia is run, and it kind of seems a bit dystopian and not actually perfect if you really think about it. I found it utterly boring because basically it's like reading a manual to a world. You know, in fiction you want to get into the world, you want to experience it through the characters living and their actions and a plot, but but this kind of just does the world building and nothing else. So you see how the world is made and that's kind of it, and I just thought that was so boring. I mean, this was written in 1516, but I've read works written in the past that are very good, and then this was just so boring and bland, so no recommendation from me. Okay, so having done all of the physical books, it's time to move on to the ebooks that I read. So let's get right down to that. So one ebook that I read was The Love Letters of Abelard and Lily by Laura Creedle, and this follows a main character who has very severe ADHD, and she's just trying to get through her life, get through, you know, secondary school, making choices, work, but she finds it so hard to stay in school, to stay focused on one thing. And as well as that, there's this guy called Abelard, and he has some form of Asperger's, that's all we know, but we don't exactly know his diagnosis. And he's incredibly smart, but he's incredibly slow to react to things, which is very contradictory to Lily because she's always very quick to react to things. And they kind of form this bond, and they have a bond through medieval literature. They both really like medieval literature, and I just thought that was so cute. And I have a full-blown review of this on my blog, so if you want to read more about my thoughts on this young adult romance contemporary novel, then check out the description blocks below. Then I read After Midnight by Santino Hassel. This is all in December, and After Midnight is a spin-off of In the Company of Shadows series by Santino Hassel and Ice. You get to know this character called Adam Blake, and we get to know that he is gay, and he has a person who he has a relationship with who is not part of their like spy organisation, but is just a normal civilian, which very rarely happens. So Santino Hassel wrote a spin-off novel about Adam Blake and this civilian romance, and how they fell in love and how they are staying together despite Adam living this double life of trying to be normal to fit in with his cover and also being a spy. And I read it and it was pretty good. Like, I was not going to read it because I was just like, I don't really care about this secondary character that was in the novel, not very interested in his side story. But his side story ended up being quite interesting. It was really entertaining. It's a new adult novel. The like explicit scenes weren't amazing or anything, they were just there and enjoyable, I guess. But yeah, I just thought it was more interesting because it was based on gang life and, you know, being stuck in drug dealing, how do you get out of it if you don't want to be in it anymore, and that was the aspect of the novel that I really enjoyed. The first book I read in January was 180 Proof Vega by Santino Hassel, and this is another spin-off from the In the Company of Shadows series, and you can read it for free online. I'll leave a link to it below, but I highly recommend you actually read the In the Company of Shadows series first, because this includes, not like spoilers, but kind of spoilers if you haven't read the main series. This one follows Emilio Vega, who is Sin's father. Basically, he's a character who has this past that the spy organisation are always referring to, but never quite go into detail with. And yes, now we get some of that detail. However, this is an unfinished novel. You're only getting the first 10 chapters. And even though the first 10 chapters are very long and amazingly good, may I say, and so interesting, because we never really get to see the true initiation of how to get into the spy organisation. And even though the explicit scenes were kind of like mind-blowing, is unfinished, which might be a problem. So if you don't want to start reading an unfinished book, I highly won't recommend this one to you. But if you read the In the Company of Shadows series and you're interested in knowing more about the spy organisation and his Sin's past but through his father's perspective, I highly recommend you pick this one up. I also read Solitude, The Change of Heart by Partho Sen, but I did a video review of that on my channel, and I also have a blog review of that. So if you're interested to know more about this werewolf romance read that I read, check the link in the description box below. I know there's links to everything down there. It's like an index for a whole new world, but yeah, definitely check it out. Then I also had to read Regarding the Pain of Others by Susan Sontag, and this is like an essay about war photography. You know, war photography is something that I've always known, I've seen around in museums sometimes, but I've never really thought about the controversial aspects of war photography, and that's what I found so interesting in this essay. However, she does reference a lot to Virginia Woolf, just a lot of references, and I didn't really get them because I hadn't looked into those sources before, so that made the reading a bit tedious at times, but when it came to her own thoughts on the controversial aspect of war photography, I was very interested. I read How to Flirt with a Billionaire by Alexis Hall. This is a sequel to How to Bag a Billionaire. Yes, these titles totally make me cringe. They are New Adult Romances, and this one was the sequel where the billionaire and the main character are giving their relationship a go. I was a bit skeptical throughout reading this one because it's so cheesy. Like, the cheese layer is 100% in this romance, so it's really cheesy, but it was a cute romance, it was a cute sequel, and the way it ended made me so curious for the finale because I don't know what's gonna happen. But yeah, it was just so cheesy. But the secondary characters, they really discuss some important themes, and I think he also does delve into some really important themes for the LGBT plus community, but also just for, you know, people, about suicide, depression. Yeah, that's that one. The last ebook that I read was Down by Contact by Santino Hassel, and this is the sequel to Illegal Contact, which is an New Adult Romance series to do with NFL football. I don't know anything about NFL football except for what I've learned from these books, and I didn't think I could be interested in it, but now I am interested in it. And it discusses so many important things about, you know, being gay in a football community, in a homophobic community, and being out in such a community. And also it really talks about how some people are just so overly homophobic because they are questioning themselves and their sexuality, and it also just has such good representation. We've got a person of colour main character, and you know me, I love Santino Hassel novels. It was a brilliant read. The explicit scenes were just like okay again. Like, when I started to read Santino Hassel, the explicit scenes were kind of not what made the story for me, but was one of the best aspects in this book. But for this book, they kind of fell by the wayside of all the important themes and how much I love the characters. So I really think for this one, the character representation and the very important themes that it discusses is what totally wins this book for me. Okay, so if you made it to this far into the video, thank you so much for sticking around. Those are all the books I read in December and January. Next time I won't be so lazy and lump 2 months together. I'll try and do a wrap up every single month this year. Okay, so let me know in the comment section below what books you have finished lately. What was your favourite read in January? What was your least favourite read? And if you've read any of these, I would love to hear your thoughts on them. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and if you managed to make it to the end. Hit the subscribe button if you want to see more of my videos, and hit that notification bell just to be sure that you don't miss out on one of my videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Goodbye. Since I've done a wrap-up post video, sorry, I'm on my booktube channel. I also recently wed. I got married, guys. I got married. Alexandra. Oh my gosh, Alexandra. I read How to Blow It, but